Well, hello everyone. Back to More People, More Problems. Got a sweet little episode in store for you folks today. We won't mention anyone else's confidential stuff, just our own, of course. If you all are enjoying the podcast, really encouraging you to like, share, subscribe, whatever, download.
Whatever. Do all of it. Why
Been
not?
get- yeah, why not? Been getting some comments here or there on the various platforms, LinkedIn and Instagram and whatnot, personal messages, which is really nice. And it really lets us gauge whether people are enjoying the content, whether it's hitting, or also providing us feedback. Like, give us
Yeah.
some feedback. Is it shit? Is it not shit? Do you like it? Like, do you want to hear more of something? Do you want to hear less of something? Do you want us to stop talking about our hair?
Sorry,
Swallowing
can't do that.
technique. Yeah, sorry, we're going to keep doing that whether you like it or not. Okay. Um, Only constructive criticism is accepted here. No, anyways. So back to the episode for today. Let me just segue. And first off, like Brittany's looking super studious. She's like got her glasses on. She's looking like a sexy therapist for some reason. I don't know, but she's really hitting the mark.
Really getting a mind's view into your desires there,
Yeah.
Chels.
Well, it's hitting for me. Um, and so she decided to look like that. And I showed up in a sweatshirt that says, Love people well, which you should always do. Brittany gave me this sweater actually. So it was one of her little hand me downs. She's like, This isn't for me. The
Oh,
peasant,
I don't love people well. Cut it out.
the peasant Chelsea will love people. No, I'm just kidding. Anyways, I've digressed a little bit too much. I'm going to toss it over to Britt. We want to talk about strategy, seeing the tidal waves, all the things that come with that. Does it matter? And should we be doing it as leaders? And she's got a couple other really juicy points that she wants to share, but I'm told she's got a story.
Yeah.
So let's listen in on that story.
Yeah. So the title of this episode, Seeing the Tidal Waves, came because when I was at my previous company, we would have exec offsites and we would generally frame the offsites. We'd start with a discussion about, let's talk about the tidal waves coming in. And I remember the first time going, okay, like, are we surfing? Like, what are we talking about? What
Deep
does this
impact.
mean? The tidal waves coming
Yeah,
in?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
not a
Okay.
surfer.
Sure.
And the explanation I got is like, okay, well, when thinking about the future of this company, of what's going to come, we need to see, predict, understand what's coming our way. So if you look at it, the analogy is like the tidal waves coming in, you need to be able to see it and see how you're going to react to it. And so it could be anything. We would get together, the 10 of us, or the 8 of us, depending on the time, and just talk about what we saw in this world. It was some of the most interesting conversations I've ever had in my life because we were all so unique and different in our interests, in our skills, in our background that we would bring different things into this conversation. Someone would, talk about, let's say, drop shipping and the power of China at the time and how they were getting more and more control over the consumer market and production. I would talk about, at the time, let's say, how human behaviors were evolving and how I thought that people were going more in line. Everything was being more distributed, how skill sets were becoming more in demand and certain ones no longer mattered. I would talk about what I thought was popular in consumer market, what people's interests were based on my view of being, at the time, let's say a 30-year-old female. We would bring things in across the board and we would just discuss it. And at the time, I remember thinking, oh, this is just fun. Like, I get to learn from these people. I get to understand what they're viewing. Sometimes there was a direct link between, okay, they see this prediction coming, and I could see if that ever happens, that's going to affect Shopify in this way. So let's talk about it. Other times, it was just an interesting prediction or view on the world, and it didn't have any direct impact on the company, but it was learning their thoughts on the topic. It was understanding how, they would address it both personally, professionally, whatever. And what I came to realize over time, because we would always start our exec offsites this way, was this was actually us discussing strategy. And I would have never tied it together because for me, I always thought strategy was kind of the outcome of strategy. It was succeeding, it was doing something, the right actions that would lead to long term success with the disruption of the world, with the disruption of the market, the unknowns, the ambiguity, strategic decisions were based on positive outcome. And I never really clued into the holistic approach to it, that it really starts with expanding your mind, with asking yourself the right questions, with viewing the world in a new way so that if and when certain disruptors would come your way, you were prepared for it and you had already thought about it. You had considered all the outcomes. You had considered what was impactful. You had made the decision that this one potential tidal wave was such a strong possibility that you all agreed that you were going to start to do, you know, precautions to make sure that if it did happen, you were going to be safe through it. And it's all of those million decisions and actions and thoughts that then leads to that positive outcome, which is the strategic long term success in the midst of disruptions and ambiguity, in my opinion. And so I guess I wanted to start with that story because I don't think a lot of us think sitting around a table and sharing our predictions on the world is strategic. But I think that's one of the most strategic things you can do. And you can learn through osmosis, you can predict, you can understand. And so I'll pause there for your thoughts because I feel like you had something to jump in. But
Yeah, so like that sharing aspect of it. So you
yeah,
guys are kind of looking at ahead, you're each sharing. You're also taking that information in, like you said, through osmosis. And it doesn't necessarily mean through that conversation that you're coming out with this is our game plan. We're doing X, Y, and Z. You've all shared different types of information and then exchanged. You
yeah.
maybe debated something, exchanged on something. And then what if something happens in 6 months, potentially related to something you discussed or completely in the periphery? And you go back to that conversation that you'd all had and you're joining all those pieces together. And to me, it sounds a lot like creativity.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think they go hand in hand. Um, because it's like to me, like creativity is bringing in more and more data points and assessments to then create something that was previously like not possible, right? Like you're connecting dots, then you have these innovative, creative moments. I think the strategy aspect of it, because I think there's a lot of creativity in these conversations, but the strategy aspect is utilizing this moment to both explore and get creative, but then and maybe I forgot to say this, but to have a shared aligned view on the world and your company so that when it comes to your point of like planning, so let's say, you're in an industry that really is heavily impacted. I mean, almost all are, but specifically impacted by the political climate. What happens there will directly drive certain decisions in your company. Discussing that, expanding your view on that, learning from each other, all of that is then going to create a shared view so that as you get into the planning and the actions that go along with that, you're aligned. You are predicting potential scenarios so that you have plans to react, to adjust. And that's what's going to result in that positive long term success because you're nimble, you're agile, you're aligned, you're working together. And hopefully you have predicted some of these potential scenarios that other companies haven't because they haven't thought that far in advance.
So, like for example, when you did your exec offsites, how long would this kind of opening discussion? Is
Oh,
it
it'd be
like
hours.
hours, hours? So this isn't like, okay, you've each got 20 minutes. Sorry, we've got 20 minutes. You're each going to take 5 minutes to
Oh, no.
shed some light on something that's going on and like how
Because
can we prevent it? It wasn't a
no,
structured.
sorry, I'm excited, so I'm cutting you off. I apologize. But no, it wasn't structured in that way. And I was researching this a bit before, and I think it's like clinically described as mind mapping, which is, expanding your thoughts, looking for new potentials, and then connecting these ideas to explore the problem set that comes with it and potential solutions. So it wasn't just, like I said, oh, China's development of consumer products is taking control. Everything's coming from there. There's a lot of power, like data, etc. It wasn't just like describing that. It was like, okay, how? Now let's talk about how that affects company. Now let's talk about what would we do if this scenario happened? How would we adjust our this strategy if this came into play? How is this going to impact? And sometimes, like I said, super tangible. We were like, okay, well, this is a decision we'd have to do. We need to pull apart this aspect of the company so that we have more um, you know, assurance that if we lose it in this industry or geographical area, we can then have a backup plan here. Other times it was, this is so far fetched. I don't know, but let's explore. And we're just going to put that one in a parking lot. If it ever comes back, we'll come back to discuss it. But we don't see that as an immediate opportunity threat. So we're going to just put that aside, but cool to explore it. But yeah, we would talk about it for hours. And sometimes it felt like you were talking in loops and you'd want to just let it go. And I think you only do that when you don't see the value of it, when you aren't zooming out and being like, no, this is strategic discussion. This is important. Let's dive in. Let's have fun with this.
So on a at least fairly preliminary level, you're identifying things that could happen in the future, and you're digging into the potential paths that you might need to take, whether to mitigate or to deal with the situation when it happens, and kind of fleshing out a kind of, we're all of the same understanding that this could happen. We might need to actually be prepared for it to happen, so we could do a couple of things. And if it does happen, here's the types of things that we'll need to put in motion during that time period, at least so that we're kind of all mentally there.
Yeah, and I
Make
think the
sense?
difference or the uniqueness of it is what I've witnessed on so many teams that I've been on, so many companies, et cetera, is that you go in a room and the top leader, everyone looks to them and you say, okay, what do you think the world is going to be and what do we need to prepare? And they will say, well, I assume this is going to happen. We need to watch out for this. And we need to have a solution because this is a big threat. And then from there, everyone comes together and tries to create the plan. And the uniqueness of what we did was it wasn't just a preset out, here's my biggest worry, here's our opportunity. It was we spent the most time on that curation to utilize the brains in the room, to utilize the uniqueness to say, okay, what are those tidal waves? How do you each see it? And we were expecting every person to come with their unique view. And that was the value creation that began that then process. I think a lot of times people ask themselves, what should we be strategic on? I think the better question is like, what shouldn't you? Because every decision and action leads to that long-term success, however big or small. And it's that holistic approach to consider, all of the aspects to it and how would you handle it? And
Right.
how do you then prepare yourself for it that's going to allow you to thrive once again in that ambiguity, in that disruptive nature, in that opportunity to see an innovative path that no one else sees. That is the strategic way of going about it.
So the things that we don't need to be strategic on, for example, like the mundane kind of the things that are working, like I think you had mentioned one time requesting vacation leave. Like you send an email, I'd like to take this vacation leave, and potentially you're sending a formal request within a system or a platform or a
Yeah.
timesheet or, things of that nature. So don't waste your time on those types of things, right? Is that what we're saying?
100%. I think that you should consider what is working really well and where are you just trying to change it for the sake of changing it instead of
Like leave
like
it
where is
alone.
it wasted time, plain and simple. But I think you should always ask yourself, is it working? Like always, is this working? Could this be better? And if it was better, would the outcome be that much better and is it worth it? Most of the time it's like
Is
no.
it worth
Like
it?
even if you
Okay.
change the vacation process, would it be that much better? Would people actually probably not. So don't waste your time. Whereas how you hire people, are you getting the best people in? Are you like that's incredibly important because your company is only as good as the people you have in it and how they're
Exactly.
thriving. So of course you want to consider that. Talking about reference checks. Are you doing reference checks in the way that is supporting you and creating the best outcome?
Right.
I just think that there's so many aspects to that. So yeah, don't double down on things that are working clearly very well, but always ask yourself and expand your mind to, some simple questions like how could this be disrupted? Like let's use the podcast for example. When thinking about this, I like if we talk about being the most strategic, there's clearly areas we know we have areas for improvement that we will be more successful if we do, such as building a bigger listening base, such as utilizing social media to get there. Like we have talked about things that we want to do. Have we talked about different disruptors or opportunities that might be coming that's going to even evolve from a podcast to different ways? Like a way to do that is okay, how do we think AI is going to change this? Do we think that instead of being on a screen, there's going to be virtual people in front of us, like our audience, that we're going to actually be standing and almost doing a live presentation and they have goggles on? Like, maybe that doesn't impact us today, but how would we change or evolve? Or what is one thing we would do that would get us closer so that if that did happen, we could leverage that moment and opportunity to make us better? And so it's just that conversation to think about it, to expand our way.
So I have a question too, just on the like the optics of it all, the your strategy sessions that you used to have, and they can, and to say also the strategy sessions can happen organically. It can be just through
Oh yeah.
discussions, with your leaders, with your colleagues, with your spouse sitting at the kitchen table, But
Yeah.
my question for you is, when you did the offsites, now, did you guys write down? Did you process map anything? Did you like work through a whiteboard? Like, I'm just curious, like, did someone take notes of like, this could happen? And let's like kind of put down some few high level notes on like, what does that trigger at that point? Just curious.
Honestly, it was so organic. It was mainly a conversation. We each had our own notepads. We would write notes if we felt like it hit. However, your mechanism of learning and absorbing is. Some people that's listening, some people that's writing, some like choose whatever medium works best for you. But it was organic. Sometimes people would draw on whiteboards depending on what it was and how to explain it. But I wouldn't overthink it. It really was just the conversation and then what felt right to get there. I would say, thinking about like tactical tips for people if you want to start thinking about it, I would go more to questions. I think the power of questions is so critical. I'd written some down, but I think one is, what is one thing that can disrupt your market or disrupt how you are doing things? And you can do that on a macro level of like company, or you can do it in a very micro level of activity. As we talked about, let's say hiring. Right now, a lot of talk about the COVID,
Oh my God, like the
everything went
biggest example
digital.
of
And
life. Yeah.
so how you hired used to have people come and meet you in person and you could read cute. Like there was such a different way. And then that disrupted. Would anyone have predicted a global pandemic? Probably not. But we would have predicted other things that hopefully then would infer.
Well,
So have
probably
that
some really
conversation.
smart people. Some probably really smart people actually
Yeah.
said, like, I knew this was going to happen after SARS or
100%.
whatever,
Yeah, I think so. Other questions you can ask is, what does greatness look like for us?
right?
Like, to expand, like, what would greatness look like? Often we skip over that and we have assumptions, then we don't actually discuss and explore what that looks like together. What is something that is critical to our success that we know about? And what is something that's critical to our success that we never talk about?
Hmm.
Once
Okay.
again, like what's under the covers? Who
Yeah.
is our audience and has that changed? I think so often our different biases don't allow us to evolve our thinking on change,
Hmm.
on what's new. So that's
We're
a good
stuck.
one.
Yeah.
Um, I always think it's great what are our competitors doing and why is that successful? I think too often we get in the trap of just being like, what are our competitors doing? Let's replicate that, when that's not going to lead to the same outcome when you implement it in your own company. So you need to ask, what are they doing and why does that work for them? And
Because it
then
might not work
what
for you.
exactly. Yeah. And I think like obviously there's tools out there. Like I don't know about you, but when I was in university, we do tons of SWOT analysis, strength, weakness, opportunities, threats. Like there's reasons why these are valuable. I just think that sometimes when you go to do that, it's too clinical. It's too like, okay, let's think of this. Whereas a good question, instead of like putting that in like what's our strengths, it's like, what does greatness look like and how do we have it? Like that's going to be your strengths, but it's said in a different way that allows you to explore a bit more. So I think that's important. Um, and I think everyone should be considering this on critical aspects of work because once again, the definition of strategy is it's a way of thinking and acting that focuses on achieving long-term success in light of uncertainty and competition. And so it's that ambiguity, it's that disruption. And if you can explore and think through, you're prepared. You see the opportunity and you leverage it. So many times we say it's all about timing. Yeah, it's about timing, but it's actually being more so prepared for the timing. That's where people fuck up.
So, what do you think, though, in terms of people who struggle with the ambiguity, who are like, are they averse to strategizing? Are they incapable of it? Are they worried? Like they don't want to think about what could happen, or the unpredictability of it all?
Well, I think an important thing with ambiguity is that people like ambiguity when it brings opportunity, and people hate ambiguity when it brings risks or threats. And so I think how you frame it and the comfort of your exploration, if it's around opportunities, if it's around talking about, okay, let's start here and then getting into some of the threats, I think you can ease people into it because naturally you're correct. Most humans do not like ambiguity because we as humans like control. We like to know what to expect. There's a lot of biases we have, for instance, of uncertainty. That's just a massive fear in all humans. Like whether you think about it in your personal life, like you want to know what you're going to have for breakfast. You want to know that you have food in the fridge. You want to have security around you so that you know what to expect because we are pattern recognition, humans. And so, of course, having a conversation around uncertainty is going to be uncomfortable. So you have to practice that muscle. You have to try and bring it out. And I think that's where it really is important to have a strong leader. And it's a skill that you build. You're not just going to be good at it right away. You're going to have a lot of aversion to it, like you said. And so you have to keep trying. Another bias is loss aversion. And it's the tendency to feel losses more acutely than gains can make individuals resist change. And so it's the theory that to lose something you already own is going to be twice as painful as it is to gain something. And that's a human bias. And so when talking about opportunities, threats, ambiguity, it can feel really hard to potentially lose something because it's going to be twice as painful. And so I think acknowledging some of these things in the forefront of like, okay, as humans, we're complex. And there's beauty with that and there's some challenges. So we have biases. Let's talk about, loss aversion. Let's talk about fear of uncertainty. Let's talk about our need for control and how that impacts how we discuss and get creative around strategy. And then I would get into it and start discussing it and show people that it's not some scary thing. We can all do it.
So what we're saying is that we need leaders who are very attuned to being strategic, and that's also going to rub off on their teams as well in order to like get those conversations going. So like how important then is it, because I've had some funny conversations recently with folks, around folks in leadership roles going, oh well, they don't need to be strategic, they need to be operational.
Hmm.
And I've had a lot of conversations where I've kind of laughed and said, well, that's really wrong. They do need to be strategic. Their team needs to be operational. And I mean, they need to support in the strategy as well, but they need to be delivering that vision. And everyone needs to be implementing and actioning strategically together. But don't ever tell me that a leader doesn't have to be strategic. I mean, I would say that is dead wrong.
Yeah, I think it's depths or levels of strategy rather than you do or you don't. I think every single person will have aspects of their role that can be and should be strategic, and will have aspects of their role that should be operational. And it's leveling degrees as you go up within a leadership role and your span of control expands, you're obviously required to be more strategic so that
Sometimes in the weeds.
yeah, well, and that percentage breakdown is going to change. But I can tell you, even when I was an executive, I was doing operational things and I was doing a hell of a lot of strategic things. It's interesting though, because I think sometimes, like, oh, you're so strategic. It's like, what the heck does that mean? Like, and that's the biggest thing that I guess, always felt a challenge with was Like, what does it mean? Are you checking a box if someone's strategic or not? And usually, like I said, it's results oriented. Like, did they predict the future and decide something and then have it happen? And then you can't replicate it because you're like, well, I don't know how to predict the future. I don't have all this stuff. And so that's why today's episode, it's like, let's talk about the first stages of it. It's about utilizing all the information around you. It's about mind mapping. It's about thought exploration. It's about understanding tangential items that might one day impact your role, your industry, your company. And so it really is about thinking through all of the options and being prepared and leveraging opportunities in the midst of uncertainty, like we said.
And I would level that being strategic encompasses so many other kind of key leadership competencies, like, you know, like you said, looking at the risks, taking possibly initiative before
Yep.
those things are happening, striving towards those results, being action oriented,
Yeah,
like
and you're
now.
actually hitting on something that's probably the hardest thing. Like I've been talking about it in a way that's very exciting and like, oh, you're going to leverage an opportunity. The hardest strategic decisions are the ones where you know in the immediate future it's going to feel bad, but you know long term it's going to prepare you. And
100%.
so those are some of the hardest ones. And to your point, you have to be a strong leader to not get influenced by the negative reaction immediately, to
Oh,
be
yeah.
able to walk people and influence and paint that vision going forward. Because strategically, you believe long term success is reliant on potentially a short term pain.
Oh, my gosh.
And
And
like,
I was just going to say, take that like even out of a work or a professional context when we talk about, like, for anyone who has kids, sleep training your children
yeah,
or your animals, like your dogs. I remember when we had a puppy at first and, crate training, for example. But, anyways, I'll go back to the baby example, going through probably a week of hell. And some of us, maybe doing the cry it out method, doing things like that. And it sucks. Like, you're not sleeping, but I get through this, like after the next week, then I'm going to have a lifelong, you know, nights of great sleep. No, not true, obviously, but the majority, is going to be good because you've actually gotten over that really horrible hump of it. And that's the same thing in work as well. And that's why always great leaders are strategic, and they're also great change managers as well,
yeah,
because
I
they're
agree.
taking people through that.
Well, and talking about that, like confirmation bias is a really big one that you need to get over when
Mhm.
trying to be strategic.
Oh, yeah.
Confirmation bias is when you have a thought about something. So let's say you believe that the best way to sleep train your baby is to let them cry it out. And so you go research, you seek information, and you really are looking for things that confirm this thought. And anything that goes against it, you're like, well, that's not reputable. So it's
Mhm.
fine.
Yeah.
And guess what? Your baby, maybe that's not the right method.
Yeah,
Maybe they need
it can work
to
for
be a
everyone.
completely different method because they're a unique child. I don't have kids, so I
Sure.
probably shouldn't talk on this nature, but I think
Unique.
that that's one to be mindful of when trying to be strategic is are you are you going through confirmation bias or are you trying to seek actually opinions and views that can completely challenge your view of it? And are you open to exploring, to listening, and
Mhm.
to understanding and to learning? That is a hard one that sounds easy in theory,
Yeah.
it is super hard. So I think that's one that you really need to be aware of. The other one is like past negative experiences. You're going to be talking about how we're pattern recognition. If, within strategic initiatives, you've had really negative situations or outcomes or whatnot, you're going to just train yourself without even realizing to go back to that feeling to then predict, oh, this isn't going to work just like it didn't last time. Acknowledge and let go. Each time
Okay.
is different. Obviously do a retro, figure out what you went wrong, what needs to change. You shouldn't make the same mistake twice, but I think exploring that and understanding that that also is a really big bias towards us is really important as you go forward.
And question for you, what about the old group think?
Oh yeah.
Because, like, I struggle with that when you see it all the time where people are like, "No, don't wanna rock the boat, don't wanna say anything, like, let's just let it go." But why? Clearly, you have
Well,
something to say. It might make a difference. It might reveal a new path or a new action
yeah.
we can take.
The crazy thing too is the groups that have the most groupthink are the ones that are so cohesive. So usually it's a threat that comes when your group is so like working well together. You're a
Right.
well-oiled machine. Well, of course, you're going to have groupthink because in general,
Helps
you're
keep it
so
going.
aligned with your views on the world. But one thing we did is anytime we would get to pat on the back for each other, we would pause. Someone would notice it and be like, "Okay, we're all just repeating. Who has a contrary view?" Like, even if you don't believe it, someone just spit something else at the different view, and we're gonna explore that. And so once again, I think
It's
so many of
interesting.
these biases, acknowledge it up front so that and, like, come up with a code word. Maybe it's banana, you know? You could be in a, like, a tidal wave discussion, and all of a sudden,
Banana.
Chelsea's like, "Banana," and then it's like, "Oh, shit, we're
Banana.
doing that again."
Minions. Yeah, it's very
You know?
minions.
Yeah.
No, that's actually a really good point because I find myself in those situations once in a while going, yeah, that was great. Like, that was really great. I mean, was it that great? There might have been something else. Did we not think of something? Can someone please say something so it stops being like a circle jerk, you know?
Yeah. No, 100%, and guess what? Like I said, like, if you guys are a cohesive group of people, it's gonna happen, so know that and get ahead of it. The
Yeah.
only other thing I would say is thinking strategically, and if you're doing it right, it's exhausting. Like, it is a lot of cognitive overhead to make yourself aware of all these biases, get ahead of them, and then to think in new ways that you're not naturally thinking of. There's, the way our brains work is we think really fast and make decisions every day. It's kind of this sensing one. It's like, you're thirsty, you pick up a water and you drink it. You don't think, oh, I am thirsty. That must mean I'm dehydrated. That must mean I need to put liquids in me. That must mean water's the best. Like, no, you just do it.
Right.
Whereas when we're talking about tidal waves, strategic thinking, actions, new ways of doing it in ambiguity, it's exhausting. You are
Right.
going against everything you know and you're
Breaking it
starting.
down.
Yeah.
You're
And so
breaking it down into very, very different separate actions, like, manageable steps or whatever the case, where you can kind of get a plan of attack for
Yeah,
all the
and just
different
give
elements.
yourself the time and the bandwidth to do it. Like, I think if you try and do this within a half an hour block and there's big expectations of then everyone's gonna go and make plan it's like, no, well, that's actually just a planning session. That's not the first steps of truly getting ahead and predicting all of the future ways and thinking through it. And by the way, you're not going to implement 90% of what you discuss, which feels sometimes like a waste of time, but it could come up 3 years later. I've had that.
Exactly. It can come up 3 years later. You still absorbed all of that information, and it might be something that you used to solve a completely different
Yeah.
problem or an issue that arises. But I actually really like the example that you just gave because I think it puts it really into perspective. You're not going to strategically break down picking up a glass of water and taking a sip of it, right? Because you're thirsty. Then I was thinking it like to kind of relay another example beside it, but I will strategically determine what color to paint my bedroom because my that might set the mood for all kinds of things. Who knows? And how does it work with the lighting and how does it work with my furniture and all different types of things. So that example of like what do you be strategic about versus what do you not be strategic about. I remember like, oh, okay, well I'll just paint it lime green and that'll be great. And like, oh, like should
No,
have
it might
anticipated it would be horrendous to walk in every day and look at a lime green wall and it for
yeah.
to hurt your eyes. I probably should have thought about that a bit more.
The one thing you made me realize that we haven't said so far is when thinking strategically and implementing an action and a plan to figure out that long-term success, only do it when you have the ability to actually action it, to do it. I think that where this can break so fast is let's say me and you decide that we're going to change the way that the government strategically hires executives. Me and you can't change that. We have no control over that. So
We're just
spending
hyper on it.
hours thinking about it, mind mapping, exploring potential opportunities, what is happening politically and how that's going to impact it, the job shortage, remote work, like who gives a shit? We cannot impact an outcome. So we have no control. So let's not do it.
Fair
Whereas
point.
painting your room, you have control. So
Yeah.
think strategically. Like within your role, just make sure that you are having the right conversations and where you actually have the ability to impact the future outcome. If you don't, that's not your discussion or your exploration to be had.
No, you're right. You're right. And I think, and we're not telling people don't think big, don't think, there aren't opportunities out there to make suggestions. We're just saying don't spend hours and hours of your time. Now, I might say I have a suggestion that would greatly improve X, Y, and Z at my department where I work. Now, it's not up to me to strategically figure out the plan. It's up to me potentially to raise, hey, I've
Yep.
identified this thing that actually might significantly benefit this organization, and maybe now it might be up to the head boss to start having that discussion with their level ones essentially, and start going, well, let's start chatting about them. Maybe they want to invite me into their strategy session, but me
Well,
on
it
my
could be a
own
great
just,
opportunity for visibility, like you just
well,
said. Like, yeah, invite in.
exactly. But like people should make suggestions, but it doesn't mean that you're the one who is solving the problem necessarily. Like I
Yeah.
think like you should have a voice. You should say you should identify those tidal
I
waves. You
mean,
should
this
be
one's
able
so
to.
nuanced because it's all in context. Like, you're a director, so of course you can have an opinion and, say, "I see this. I wanted to talk about this. I think there's an opportunity here. I Are you aware of it? Can I support in any way?" Now you have it. But if it was like an administrative, like, I just want to be real. I'd love to say that, yeah, an admin role within the recruitment team has the same ability to influence action and project. Maybe they do. I don't think that's actually the case in most organizations. And so, I
Well, it
mean, that's
gets
up to you to be able to decipher that. And it's obviously hugely dependent on the corporate culture and like what's available. But
but I
yeah,
mean,
don't overinvest yourself if you can't have actual power or control to change things.
right, but like you can still raise things as an administrative assistant on a recruitment team, and it depends on how leadership, like that leadership culture is, and how that's brought down. And that's why they say from the top levels how it's promoted down through the ranks. So if they're going to raise that to their manager, and their manager says, hey, that's a really great idea, I really appreciate you raising that, I'm going to chat with my boss about it at my next bilateral meeting with them. And it's funny because we do these surveys like in the government, public service employment survey, and kind of rates on like over 100 questions. And one of the ones that often, well, that seems to always be there is like, my manager or my department values my input, values the information that I bring to the table. They listen, like they hear what I have to say. And I think that that is a reflection of the culture and the
Yeah.
leadership. So what is the top saying in accepting information like that? Yeah, I'm not going to go as the admin assistant and send a message out to the head of our organization and go, well, I think we should do this, but I might pass it up the chain, and it could spin something off eventually that might move its
I'm
way up.
totally in agreement with you, by the way. I really think the best organizations and environments are open to ideas and interpretations and views on the world and on the work and the opportunities ahead of us and the threats at all levels because you
Yeah,
have
of
different
course.
vantage points. So I completely agree. Some of the best, most innovative solutions in like the workplace are coming from obviously people doing the work. You
Of course.
lose.
They're identifying, like, I mean,
Yeah.
they're
I just
likely in the weeds, so they're identifying the
100%.
issues, but it doesn't mean that they're strategically
Yeah.
planning for them.
I just don't know if that's actually true in all organizations. So I don't
Maybe not.
want people to listen and be like, I have this great idea I've seen, and then like not go anywhere. I think it's more so talking about that cognitive overload of explore, try. If you see something, if you have a tidal wave that you're like, no one else is seeing this, I see it. I think it's me critical. I know what we could do about it, or I have some ideas. Go have a conversation with someone. But don't invest a week worth in this and then have it go nowhere and be exhausted and not do your day job. Like it's just
Yeah,
balancing that
fair point.
together for
Super
sure.
fair point. That's
Yeah.
great. Well, what's the TLDR on this one, that, or TLDL?
TLDL. I think it's when thinking about strategy, expand your mind to think about the holistic approach to strategy. It's not just a plan that executes in success. I really think it is thought exploration. I think it's, the ability to see the tidal waves or the crystal ball in front of you and start to prepare an aligned view on what that could look like. Prepare yourself. And it's all the actions, decisions, and planning that then come together to make sure that you are prepared and ready for the ambiguity, the uncertainty, and the competitors around you. And it can be applied to many different levels within your work. Um, but it's all the holistic approach. Don't forget, maybe the most important, which is the beginning phases of it.
The beginning phases. Okay, well, that's awesome. Hopefully, we've given the viewers a lot to chew on in this
Yeah.
episode about the strategy, how to be strategic, who needs to be strategic, and what should you be strategic about.
Yeah. And
Shall
now we
we?
wine. Should
And
we
now
be
we went.
strategic about wine?
No, that's just like
That's just grabbing the
I don't
wine.
need to think. I don't need to think about that.
Love that. Okay, be right back. Okay, we're back with our cocktail of choice. Today we're not doing wine, we're going to do a cocktail. I don't know if anyone's heard of Betty Buzz. It is Blake Lively's mocktail. I guess she's not a drinker, so she came out with all these mocktails.
Cool.
Mind you, I think she just came out with like actual alcoholic ones, which I feel like you're just trying to make money. Like I liked this vibe more. But anyways, I added booze to the mocktail, but this one is the sparkling lemon lime. So it's kind of like a margarita, and I just added some tequila to it.
Ooh.
But for the non-drinker listeners, you could also not add the booze like me and just drink the mocktail.
Can't say
Very
we're not
cute.
inclusive here. Drinking or not drinking, you can have what you will.
Yeah. Um,
Sounds yummy.
yeah.
Okay, well, I got a Cottage Springs.
Yeah. Basic. But
I always have a load of these in my wine fridge. So a little wild cherry Cottage Springs. Hey, why not? Hey, at least it's not White Claw because Brit said, "Well, oh, I don't like the White Claws
yeah, I
anymore."
love Cottage Springs.
So I
Cottage
got a little
Spring all the
Cottage
way.
Springs in my
But the
thermocol.
Betty Buzz is good. I would like it's not too sweet. It goes well with or without the tequila. I guess you could probably do vodka in here too. But it's nice. Like I would give that an 8 for anyone that's looking for either mocktail or else to spice it up with a little real booze. It's good.
Buy a mocktail and then just add alcohol to
I
it.
know I don't know if I should be talking and like supporting the brand, but not. Anywho, I think it's meant for that.
It's up to you. Y'all can do what you want. You can do
Yeah.
what you want with this. Like we're just offering information.
Mhm.
You make a strategic decision.
I thought you were gonna say that. I love that. You make your own strategic decisions.
And
Go
me,
for
I
it.
have a Cottage Springs, as usual. Like, I mean, give them a 9. These are great for the pool,
Yeah,
great for a Sunday afternoon, whatever, Friday night, whatever floats your boat. You
right?
can do it.
Enjoy.
Just enjoy it. Just enjoy it.
And on that part of being by a pool, you are going down south soon to enjoy a lot of pool weather and sunshine.
Oh, well, I mean, I hope so. I actually haven't checked the weather to see what it's up to right now. Hopefully there's no like, oh, it's going to be raining all week or something.
That sucks.
No, well, I don't. Well, I mean, that would suck. I'm not
Yeah,
saying
yeah.
that that's the case. I will check the weather after to confirm it. Like that would be horrible.
Well, a friend of mine on Instagram is in Mexico and she posted that she's like in the sun by the pool and she's like, the only 8 hours we've gotten of sunshine in Mexico, still better than 8 hours in Ottawa, like no hours. And I was like, ooh, that's rough.
Okay,
Like,
now you're freaking me out. So I'm
sorry.
going to check. Okay, so okay, we're going on Tuesday. So 28 sun and cloud. Wednesday, Thursday looks like a bit of
But that's like a
cloud.
quick run by. You know what I mean? It's like a
Yeah,
flyby of clouds, then it's good.
yeah, and then Friday, Saturday looks great, and then it looks like there could be some cloud. But my parents are there now, and they've been there for 3 weeks. They said it just like usually will rain in the morning, and then it clears up in the afternoon.
There
So
you
I'm
go.
hoping that, but it does seem like a good smattering of nice sunny weather. And that we're going to Puerto Plata in the Dominican Republic. So my
And
parents are
you
there.
guys aren't at a resort. You guys are
No.
doing like a rented house.
Yeah, and I've never done that before in one of those like really resorty destination type areas. I mean, we did that when we all went to Barbados, but I wouldn't say
Yeah.
that's necessarily a massive resorty spot. But like usual, when people go to Dominican, Mexico, Cuba, they're all going on resorts, right?
Yep.
So, anyways, no, my parents rented a villa that's like just a couple of blocks from the beach, and it's, big 5 bedroom villa, has a lovely pool, like really really nice. So they've been there for about 3 weeks now,
And they've been loving
enjoying
it.
it. Yeah, they've been really enjoying it. They said they have everything they need. Grocery stores are close. There's lovely restaurants close walking distance. There's like a water park or something, so they're kind of making plans for us. So yeah, we're all heading down Tuesday, so is my sister and her family. So that should be a fun. We're just there for a week. It's just a kind of
Is
a
that
quickie.
I was like, "That's not spring break." Like, we're not even there yet. So you're taking the kids out of school for a week.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's not March break or anything like that, but I actually feel like it's spring break for like the universities and stuff like that. Because when I was talking to a colleague the other day, she said, "Oh, her daughter goes to U of T." She's like, "Oh, she's out like it's reading week or what, like
Oh,
reading
yeah,
week."
yeah, yeah. Because
Because I think
exams are
I think they usually do it on the week because like we have Family Day on Monday, which is like,
ah,
Ontario holiday or some
yeah,
other
yeah.
provinces. But anyways, yeah, I'm taking the kids out. I don't even know that I would even consider going somewhere I'm on actual March break, because not only is it crazy expensive, but it's like so packed all the time, like flights and people and
Me
everywhere.
and Scott just booked a trip to Hawaii over March break, and we're like, "Oh, that might not have been a good idea." We didn't realize. The kidless parents didn't realize. So we'll see.
Oh my word. Yeah, what made you think of that timing?
Well, because I gotta go to San Francisco for a work thing. So we're
Yeah.
going there for a day, and then we're, like, talking about hopping over to go to Hawaii, and we have so many guests coming, that it's, like, very specific when we can leave, when we don't have people coming here, like family,
Okay.
essentially, and so it just worked out, and then afterwards, we realized, and I was like, "Well, we'll see how it goes."
But I don't know, like what's the state's March
Yeah,
break?
I don't
What's
know, actually.
like Canada and stuff like that. Like even like in Ottawa here, the public school board versus the Catholic, or the French versus the English, they do different weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I mean, it's in March. Like somewhere as you hit kind of those 3 weeks, like in March, like somewhere you're hitting a March break somewhere.
Like, listen, a few extra kids, I'm gonna be drinking, I'm gonna be
How
bathing
many
in the sun, I'm
how
good.
many people are taking their kids on, I mean, like unless you're really wealthy, are taking their kids to Hawaii for March break? I mean, is it a
Well, you live
lot?
in the States is vastly different than when you live in Canada and you
Yeah,
go
I
to
guess
Hawaii.
because it's a big travel, right?
Yeah, it's only like 5 hours for almost 5 hours from here.
That's sweet.
Yeah,
That's like not bad. Oh, let's just hop to Hawaii, just like
yeah.
for a quick trip.
Well, a lot of people here won't go to, like, Dominican or Mexico because it's further, right? Like, so it just depends.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Like it's on the other
Like,
side.
Dominican's only, like, 3.5 hours for you, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
it's just like straight down.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
don't know, okay, little known fact, I'm terrible at anything geographical. Is that the right
No, well,
term
you
even?
seem to have it. Like you just said, closer for you guys, not for us. Like that
Well,
seems
I
like
just know the flight time. I don't know anywhere in the I can't picture the map, and I have no idea. I just know I've flown enough from Ottawa to know that it's like 3 hours, and I'm
yeah,
like, "Well, it's 3 hours from there, deduction, it can't be 3 hours from here."
yeah. I mean, that's a fair point because like you're very westy, and we're pretty well central east. Like
Yeah,
more
I
east
think
actually.
sounds good.
I don't know. Whatever.
This
We should
is
stop talking about this before
Well,
people
it's so
think we're
funny because this is
stupid.
like what Scott always gets mad at me. Like the other week, we were leaving a bar with my parents, and I just walked out so confidently and started walking one direction. And he's like, "What are you doing? Like you're going the wrong way. Like come back." And he's like, you just so like confidently go and you think you know, and 90% you're wrong." And I'm like, "You're not
Fake
wrong.
it till
I
you make it.
usually am wrong in my directional pursuits. I just somehow am so confident in it always,
I,
which
I
is a
mean,
false."
if you don't walk off a cliff or anything, like I
Yeah.
think that's all right. But listen, fake it till you make it. You think you know where you're going, don't that's fine. I think that's okay.
Well,
If you got a
until it gets us in trouble.
path set out in your mind or whatever.
Just, like awareness, like physically awareness challenge. That's what I'll say I am.
physically unaware.
Yeah, that's a
Physically,
better way of saying
the
it. Cool, cool.
physically awareness challenge for those of you like who are
Tongue
listening.
twister, Britneyism.
Yeah.
Anywho, what else is new? You're good?
Yeah, good. It's like snowing, crazy snowing
Oh,
today. We haven't,
really?
well, apart from the other day, we had a little bit overnight, but it's essentially like the first snow in February,
That's
which is like
crazy.
unheard of, right? There was a little bit the overnight, but like it's full on like blizzarding right now. I do have to actually go out and do a few things after, which is kind of annoying,
This
but it,
episode probably won't be launched till March, so now you have a sneak peek that it's the end of February when we're recording.
oh darn. Yeah,
Okay,
sorry.
it's real. It's very nice here. It's finally warm again. It had been so cold and raining. Like there was multiple days where I would look at Ottawa weather and then Arizona, like Scottsdale weather, and I was like, we're about the same. This is
Oh my
terrible because
God,
Ottawa
isn't it
was so
crazy?
mild.
So mild for the first couple of weeks of
Yeah.
Feb, and it was just lovely. It's kind of gotten a bit cool over the last few days, and I was like, oh my God, I need gloves or something.
Yeah.
Like,
You're
you know,
finally getting the winter.
yeah. And then I was like, no, my, and funny because it like all comes out physiologically too. Like my skin's felt totally fine this
Yeah.
whole winter. Like, but usually by this time, most years, like my hands are like cracked and
I was
like
gonna say now
super
you're becoming
dry.
the raisin. You were still a plump grape. Now it's shrivel time.
Well, I'm hoping. Well, no, because now I'm gonna go to Dominican, so
Oh yeah,
obviously
true. You gonna
I'm
get a
gonna
spray
take
tan before you
water.
go?
Am I gonna? No, I'm not gonna get a spray tan before we go.
Oh,
I mean, I would,
okay.
but then I'm gonna be in the pool so much and
Yeah,
like in
you're
the
gonna get
ocean water.
splotchy.
It's like too. Chloe was saying, "Oh, should we go get like pedicures and that?" And like for most trips, I would be, but I said, but last time we did that right before a trip when we were in Cuba, and like you're in the sand, you're in the water, it
Yeah.
comes off like within 2 days. So I'm like, I'm not. We'll do it. We'll do our pedicures at home. I don't
Yeah,
care if it
shellac
gets
or
me,
bust, you know?
but I'm not putting $100 into it. I
Yeah.
know, but still, even shellac with that much chlorine and that much salt water and sand,
Oh,
it doesn't
really?
hold. It doesn't. It don't hold up. I'm telling you that. The feet, it doesn't hold up on
Do
the
you remember
feet.
that time when we were in Dominican in the pools and my hair went pink because it was like blonde and like the
Oh my
chlorine just
god.
like and I had like pink hair. It was crazy. I was like, "What is it?" Then I realized. So like I try and never get my
So
hair
funny.
wet when I go to the public pools.
Oh, I mean, you definitely have to be careful when you have a blonde color, especially when you're like a level one or like a
Yeah.
level two.
Well, like the amount of kid piss and probably adult piss, let's be honest,
Yeah,
in those pools, you gotta chlorine the shit out of them.
kid piss and adult piss. Yeah, I mean there would be. There's people doing some hard drinking. I mean, remember that one day that we
When
were
you
all
see
there?
someone sitting at the bar for 5 hours and they're
Oh
drinking that
yeah,
much,
they
you're
never
like,
brought up. Like,
"Uh,
how is that even possible that
yeah, it's not possible."
they've been consistently drinking all these like watered down like massive tall beverages, and they haven't moved. They're definitely whizzing on that swim up bar.
Yeah, and if you're sober, it's really disgusting, but, you know, as your own cocktails flow, you kinda say f like, not I never pee in pools, I, like, have too much stage fright, I just couldn't. Even in the lake, it takes me, like, a half an hour to
Yeah, it
even whiz
does.
in there, so I
Yeah,
just can't. I wish I
yeah.
could, but I can't. Um, honestly, but, like, I'm kinda like, "Oh, it's so gross," and I don't wanna go in, and then at a certain point, I'm like, "Fuck it, whatever, there's enough chlorine in here, we'll be fine."
So we all know now that Brittany's a pool pisser.
No,
Like,
I'm saying I can't. I say more so like other I'm okay with others piss.
oh,
If
okay.
I honestly sometimes wish I could. I just can't. I get stage fright.
You can't do it,
You've
folks. You
witnessed
cannot
it
do it.
firsthand.
I know, I know. You always like when we're at the lake at the cottage, I'm like, just go. There's nowhere else to do it. Like we're gonna
I
be out
make
there for
everyone look
hours.
away. We
Yeah, yeah.
sing.
She's very interesting when we have a
That's a nice way of putting it.
yeah,
But
I mean
anyways, well, now that we've talked about pool pissing, I think we wrap it up and wish you on a glorious trip. Can't wait to hear about it when you come back.
fantastic. Yes, I can't wait to fill you all in. Thank you.
Cheers. Love ya.
Yes. Yeah, yeah.